Um, so yes, as a way to settle ourselves for the topic of today, um, we can begin with just a short prayer and then followed by a short meditation, and that will help us to slowly bring our awareness to the present moment.
Prayer for taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye choram soke chornam la janju bardo dagni gyap surchi ragi chunyi beswanangi drola penche sangye droba shu. Sangye choram soke chornam la janju bardo dagni gyap surchi Dagi chunyi beswanangi drola penche sangye droba.
So, a foundation for a basis or foundation for us to proceed on uh, a more spiritual, path and spiritual endeavor. It is, I think, quite essential that we, slowly bring awareness to the present moment. And it is the meditation that we usually do before teachings or and before any practice really of this focusing on the breath is a method, really a technique where you initially, because our mind through habituation is constantly, busy and bombarded with so many thoughts and ideas and agendas and a very busy mind, really. And when we're in the midst of that busyness, we don't even maybe recognize and realize that the mind is so busy. But if it were busy with all virtuous and all positive things, then I'll be fine, no problem. But a lot of the things that we get, takes our attention and an energy is worries, fears, problems, agendas that, difficulties, and all of that can really weigh us down. So uh, to try to assume that we can, jump into a spiritual practice and try to leave that all aside right away might be a little bit presumptuous. So the technique which is presented, which is a very incredible, incredible, I would say even powerful technique if one starts to get into it, is this simple meditation on focusing on the breath, which is really a practice which is across all Buddhist traditions. And of course, nowadays you hear it a bit presented as mindfulness, but really it is a practice of initially a practice to develop one's attention and focus. But the process is first we bring our busy mind into a more neutral state. And then from a neutral state of mind, then we have a more chance of generating a positive state of mind. Um, and of course, these terms of positive and negative is all in relation to our conventional world where we are affected by certain things in a negative way, where it weighs us down, makes our mind become, uncomfortable, anxious, and all that. That is, in a conventional terms, we use it as a negative because it has a negative impact upon ourselves. And what is termed as positive is that which brings a sense of uplifting in our mind, feeling more sense of joy, sense of a purpose, more meaning in life, and and that's why, because often you do hear people making comments like, "I thought Buddhism is not about good or bad. You transcend all of that. There shouldn't be any. Why do you use terms of positive, negative?" when we're still working on a conventional level, it's all relation to our experience. And if we haven't yet transcended, then we need to work with our mind at the level that it is. So therefore, um, these terms of bringing our mind from a more distracted, maybe even negative state of mind into first a neutral state of mind, and then from that bringing into a positive state of mind. So therefore, just for those who might be a little bit newer to this meditation technique and the purpose of it, I just want to just share that. So the technique is actually quite simple, where we begin by, it is really bringing awareness slowly to the present moment and being fully aware of one's present moment. And again, and then within that, then to choose an object such as our breath to harness our ability to focus and develop concentration. So again, to assume that we can immediately jump into a meditative state is again presumptuous. So here, what we do is we just bring our awareness slowly to the place we're in, the space we're in, just acknowledging that for those here present in this beautiful gompa or prayer hall, and for those at home too, wherever we may be, we are definitely in a safe space. And because we're here for a spiritual purpose, it's a sacred space. Even at home, wherever we may be, it is a sacred space. So for us to have this safe and relatively peaceful and quiet and definitely a sacred space, to be here at this time, we can feel a sense of gratitude in having this opportunity. And from the awareness of the space, now we can slowly bring awareness to our physical presence here. Yes, we are here with the body, but unlike any body, we have what is called a human life. And from the Buddhist teachings point of view, not only a human life, but a precious human life, which means we are endowed with the physical and mental conditions to utilize our full potential to realize not only our immediate purpose and goals, but an ultimate goals. So having this precious human life, we can feel a sense of gratitude and great appreciation that we have this precious human life at this time. And as we bring awareness to our body, here we have time, maybe just a few moments to scan our body, whether we're sitting cross-legged in a more traditional form of meditation or whether we're sitting on a chair. It is perfectly fine. Main thing is to just get in touch with our body. And as we slowly work our way up from the bottom of our feet, just mentally let go, like imagine letting go of any tension in our body. And so we're trying to find a posture here for meditation where we are trying to find the right balance, where we are attentive, but not too rigid. Very, very too often when we begin our meditation practice, we feel like we've got to find a perfect posture. And unbeknownst to ourselves, we start feeling pains and aches, and that is because we're being too rigid. So there's this fine balance where we're sitting upright, if possible, with your back spine straight. And when you straighten your back spine, your shoulders, your chest naturally expands to allow the full capacity of our lungs when we breathe in, and to have our shoulders relaxed. And when we have our neck straight, then there's this natural position where our head slightly comes forward. So the advice given in the meditation manuals is not to have our head held up high, because that will strain the neck, or not too low, as that can cause drowsiness and eventually even, fall into a sleep mode. So just having the so with one's facial muscles, we just relax them. The mouth is closed, but the jaws are not clenched tight on a natural position. And the advice in our tradition is not to have the eyes open, because then external things, when we see it visually, it could distract our mind, but not have them completely closed, as that when it's completely closed, then it can also bring in an onset of a little bit of a darkness, and then easily meditation can fall into a drowsy state and a sleep state. So when the eyes are slightly, just very slightly open, just to the point where there's some visibility of light, knowing that we are awake. But again, we're not focusing on anything external. It is as if we're gazing straight ahead, but with our eyelids slightly shut. And now for the actual meditation, then, where we now start to leave the focus on our body, assuming that it is in a nice posture, relaxed but attentive, then we can bring our awareness now to the breath. And here it's a very natural, the breathing. So we're focusing on our external breath, the breath which comes in naturally and goes out as we breathe out, preferably breathing through our nostrils, unless you have a blocked nose. And it's a very natural breathing. So that's not labored, it's not forceful. And then when we make the decision that for the next few minutes, as I've decided that I'm attending this morning session, I have nothing else on my agenda that I need to attend to. So definitely physically, we don't have to be anywhere else. But now, more importantly, mentally, we decide that for the next few minutes at least, there's nothing to lose if we just focus on our breath, and we might gain something positive. So if there's nothing to lose, then we might as well let aside all the other thoughts and agendas and ideas. They will still pop up in our mind, as they do naturally. But this time, the difference would be we would choose not to follow those thoughts. Just a constant reminder to bring awareness back to the breath. And it's a very gentle approach where we're breathing in naturally through our nostrils. And imagine seeing the breath coming in, breathing to the full capacity of our lungs, but not to stress it, just naturally. And then after we breathe in, there's this natural short gap before we breathe out naturally, and being fully aware of that gap before we breathe out naturally. And so we're just focusing on the breath coming in and going out. So in this way, we'll spend just about 3 or 4 minutes. If we find ourselves caught up with some sort of fleeting thought, just gently bring the awareness back to the breath. So here we can now just bring awareness to whatever sensation we may be having right now. We might as well acknowledge that when there's no reason at all to be anxious, to be fearful, to be agitated, to be angry, for whatever reason, when we kind of leave all of that aside, what we naturally notice is a more calmer, more settled state of mind. And consequently, a relatively more peaceful state of mind. And this is, of course, a great revelation. We get a glimpse of that potential that we have within ourselves to be calm, to be peaceful. And since we have managed to come to a relatively more calm and peaceful state of mind in this practice right now, this would be possible at any time that we choose. And particularly with familiarity, we will be able to prolong this sense of calmness and peacefulness. And we have actually, unbeknownst to ourselves, prepared ourselves for the last stages of our life in this life. So if we wonder what a peaceful passing or death would be, it is this, being in a relatively calm state of mind where we have let go of everything temporarily, no reason to be agitated. Our mind is free of any desires, just in a calm, peaceful state. So if we can be in this state of mind at the time of our death, we would be having a peaceful death. And this is it. There's no other secret than just allowing oneself to let go, be calm, and not allow the mind to be carried away by any fears, anxieties. If it is possible now, it can definitely be possible at any time during our life, and especially at the end of our life. When we take a last breath, if our mind is in a peaceful, calm state as it is now, we have taken care of ourselves and brought great comfort and joy those surround us at the time of death, giving them hope and inspiration to also have a calm and peaceful death. So with that acknowledgement and this being, again, a sense of appreciation and having discovered this within ourselves, we can now slowly come out of this meditation, but with also the intention that may this session today, our time together, become most meaningful. And from whatever we gain from this, may it serve not only as a means to further discover and acknowledge and discover more in-depth treasures within ourselves, but then by that, may we also be able to naturally, spontaneously be able to assist others, help other beings. In short, whatever we gain from our practice together today, may it serve as a cause to truly, unconditionally be able to benefit others. And with that aspiration and prayer, the activities we engage in today, the discussions, the practices, the discussions, all of that will become actually a means, will actually become a cause to not only benefit ourselves, but to benefit other beings as well. When the time is right, when we have mastered ourselves, spontaneously, naturally, we'll be able to assist others. So with that motivation in our mind, we can now slowly bring awareness back to our physical body. And as we gradually open our eyes, becoming aware of the immediate surrounding. So, so that could be the topic, and we could just maybe end there because we've got all the material that we need. uh, yeah. So, uh, first of all, I'll just maybe announce to everyone that a disclaimer in choosing to present this topic, it is in no ways and means that to claim that I have much understanding and no way in being any expert on this topic of death and what happens after death and what is best to do at the time of death. I'm very much a beginner and learner in all of this, but I might, like many of you too, I would have heard these teachings from other masters and teachers. And in my role as being a translator for nearly 20 years, I've had the opportunity to translate on these topics and other topics of Buddhism. So I guess I'm just kind of like sharing whatever I've understood and learned so far. And in our discussions and with others who have also heard these teachings, and we can enrich each other's understanding and knowledge by sharing. And so although it's presented as a talk or a teaching by me, I see it more as an opportunity to share what I have and also learn from others. So that's why I like my sessions to be more interactive, although I end up being the one who speaks the most. But again, today we have more time, unlike yesterday's session. So we have time for more discussions. And so I'll be presenting the topic today in like three maybe sections, or breaking up in three sections. The first part this morning will be why choose this topic? Why are we interested in topic? And for those of you who are here, very brave to choose to hear this topic, which is culturally in this, in our culture, not something which you would be easily to discuss in any dinner table. But so why are we choosing to discuss this topic? So basically the first part I would theme it as being the purpose and need to be aware of death. Why are we being aware of death? And then we'll have a short break after the first part, and then when we come back, I've been introduced to an exercise many years ago in an actual hospice group. So it's called a loss exercise. So it's a very interactive and then that's when I will put you to work. And it was going to be a little tricky for those online, but I have figured out that those online can also do it at home. So it's an exercise that we do here physically, but those also at home can do it. And then it will be our lunch break. And then after the lunch break, then I'll be presenting more on the actual death process. Again, in 1 day period, we don't have time to really cover much in detail, but I feel that even in a short time that we have to to contemplate it in whatever capacity we can, to discuss it to whatever capacity we can, and I feel that it's more me pointing out and introducing you to the topic, and then with the interest that you have, there's always I'll be suggesting materials that can be purchased, books, and you can study more about it and learn more about it. So it's an ongoing learning process for all of us. So with that in mind, then the first part is then, awareness of death. Why should we be aware of death? I guess the simplest answer is because it'll happen. I remember, I don't know who it was, but I think someone was asked, why did you go through that whole ordeal of climbing Mount Everest, for example? And I don't know, it's one of the earliest climbers, and apparently his answer was because it's there. And for someone who has that mindset of wanting to conquer a mountain, Well, if that reason is because it's there, you want to conquer it, well, why not be aware of that? Because it's there. It's all around us. It's happening, and it's happening all the time. As we're living, there's so many deaths which are happening all the time. And eventually we will have to experience it ourselves. So might as well uh, be more aware of it and try to figure out as much as we can about what it's all about. Um, in the Buddhist context, and I think in every spiritual tradition, the awareness of death would be a topic which is brought up in almost every tradition, and particularly in Buddhism, it's a very big topic. It is actually claimed that one of the first teachings the Buddha taught on was on impermanence and death. When he talked about suffering, the suffering of impermanence, the suffering of death is follows. And during his when he was giving teachings during his discourses, whenever he was giving discourses, he'd always remind people of the transient nature of life. And his last teaching was actually a public display of his own passing. That was said to be one of the optimal teachings of the Buddha, where he actually told his disciples, now this is the last time you'll see an enlightened body before it naturally disintegrates, because he still had the human body, so that was going to disintegrate. But he was telling his disciples, and he gave a last teaching. One of his last teachings was also on death and impermanence. And the reason why it is considered very important in the Buddhist tradition is because it becomes a catalyst. It becomes an impetus or a catalyst to live by contemplating death rather than things seeming bleak and like losing hope of what's the point of doing anything. It actually gives one more purpose of doing things more meaningful. And apparently contemplating in death helps you to live a fuller life. When one takes death more seriously and contemplates and understands it, it can be an impetus to make our life, enrich our life, to become, of course, in Buddhist context or any other tradition context, it would allow us to become more spiritual. Uh, uh, and so what does it mean to be spiritual in the Buddhist context then? And this is where maybe we can discuss like the general demarcation between what is Dharma and what is not Dharma. How do you define what is Dharma and what is not Dharma? And there could be teachers take on, my simplest version is that if you have a positive state of mind at any time, a virtuous state of mind, that is Dharma. If you have a negative state of mind, that's non-Dharma, regardless of what you're doing physically, verbally, and mentally. Even so, that means that if seemingly you're doing a spiritual practice, a Dharma practice, saying prayers, but if your mind is a negative state of mind, in that moment, you're not practicing Dharma because your mind is a negative state of mind. Yeah. So that is my simplest version. But as according to the teachers and lamas, and I think Gyabsha Lama Zobo Rinpoche would have emphasized this point, is that if one's activities are influenced or tainted with what is known as the 8 worldly concerns, then that would be non-Dharma. If whatever activity you're doing is not tainted or influenced by the 8 worldly concerns, then, and with the proper means, then that would be a Dharma practice. So that is the general demarcation of routine, what is Dharma and what is not Dharma. And I don't know if I have to list the 8 worldly dharmas, and maybe everyone is already familiar with it, but basically it's the pair of the 4. Yeah. If whatever one does is with a primary focus or intention with to gaining some temporary satisfaction, temporary gains, that's one side of the first pair. And then as the counterpart of that is loss. If whatever one does is, if one cannot bear even the slightest loss, and one feels one's life is, one becomes completely distraught with a slight loss, worldly losses, and then that affects one to such a great extent where one overwhelms oneself, that is the other side of that gain, the gain and loss. Second pair is if one's primary concern is pleasure. Again, here pleasure is, we were talking about worldly pleasures. If one's primary focus is all one's energy and time is invested in gaining some fleeting pleasures of the senses, and that's all we're resorting to our time and energy towards, then that would be a worldly concern. It will not be a Dharma practice. And the other side of that would be um, pain, pleasure and pain. Now, pain is a very interesting thing. Of course, who would like pain? We don't like pain, right? And of course, the modern medicines are trying to alleviate the slightest pain. The advance in the technology has been that they could do procedures on us with the least invasive and least painful procedures. But nevertheless, there's bound to be pains in whatever pursuits that we wish to get. If we want to have a good health, there'll be some pains involved with that. And of course, there's this famous quote of no pains, no gains, right? So yes, we are with our conditioned existence in samsara, we're bound to experience certain kind of pains and discomforts at time. So if our orientation of our endeavor and our energy is invested into avoiding the slightest pain, we're setting ourselves again up for great disappointments when the pain does occur. And in other words, not only in the spiritual world, but even in the worldly sense, we all know that in order to gain something, it will take some effort, and effort is not fun. Effort can be painful. Effort can be, it can be, you have to spend energy, time and energy, and it can be a little bit uncomfortable. Studying can be uncomfortable. But if it's for a greater cause, we will willingly endure some hardships and difficulties because we know it is for a better good, a greater good, rather. So, like in the worldly sense, the spiritual sense, in the spiritual world, as long as we still have a contaminated body and mind, yes, we are going to experience difficulties and hardships, even on the spiritual path. The short meditation we did was nice and very comfortable for as long as but if we really wish to go in a longer endeavor of practice of meditation and retreats, it's going to be hard. And if we're not willing to experience any hardship, whatever we do, then we're trying to avoid the slightest pain, and that's a worldly concern. So to rise up above that urge in wanting to avoid even the slightest pains and willingly accept some hardships when it's for the better, for the greater good, that will be a Dharma practice, especially if it's within the spiritual practice. Yeah. So gain and loss, pleasure and pain, then this becomes more challenging. If our energy and time is invested in wanting to hear only pleasant things from others, only pleasant sounds, no criticism at all, and whatever we do is so that we get only pleasant remarks from others, that's going to be a worldly concern. And avoiding even the slightest unpleasant remark is going to be a worldly concern. Yeah? And then the last two pair is reputation and defame. If what we're doing is solely to gain a reputation for ourselves, to be well known, to be acknowledged as the greatest person in that field, whatever. In other words, as we know that if what we're doing is so that we just get some worldly fame, then that'll be a worldly concern. And trying to avoid and being completely devastated even if there's the slightest defame. Now, of course, defame is going to be a part of life. Even when one does all the right things, there are going to be some people who are going to be criticizing us or defaming us. But if we know in our heart that we've done the right thing, and that comes with the karma, understanding of karma, when we know that we have done the right thing, so be it. We can't please everyone. Yeah. So with that understanding, allowing our mind to be completely consumed with even the slightest, even if there's some defame, and being determined to follow one's practice and be true to oneself would be to avoid that and to put it in our time and energy into Dharma practice or spiritual practice or doing the right thing, the righteous life. would be that in the Buddhist terms, a spiritual practice or Dharma practice more specifically. So now let us then consider, where do these worldly concerns come from? Wanting to have gain and not wanting to experience any loss, wanting to have only pleasures, wanting to be liked and being praised. Where do these tendencies come from when we are overly attached to this life, our existence now? When all our time and energy is invested in only like my well-being as it is now in this life, and when the whole focus is geared only on this life's concern, then the tendency to gain as much as possible in this life, to avoid as much as pain in this life, to gain much as to gain likes from others as much as we can, avoid any dislikes, and praising words. And so we can see the picture here that when we're overly concerned with only this life, then those earthly worldly concerns seem to become more prominent, predominant or prominent. And so therefore, when we bring to mind the fragility of our life, and I know that our life will not actually last as long as we think it might, in the practice of meditation, I'll just through it, point all of it, but just to introduce it, this meditation on the death, what is called the 9-point death meditation, is really a systematic way, a practical systematic way of bringing to awareness that, yes, death is very real. Although we might be very, how should we say, the misconception that we would have a long life. When we develop some common sense, we of course we've come to an acknowledgement that yes, I'm going to die one day, but not soon, of course. There's no rush, there's no hurry. It'll be far in the future. Yeah. So in other words, if someone suggests that one need to prepare for one's death, yes, fine, I will prepare, but there's plenty of time. Yeah. So we have that and then that illusion that we have plenty of time, and that it comes from a deep-seated sort of misconception that we are permanent. We actually have this, one of the misconceptions that leads us into the worldly concerns, the fundamental misconception or the fundamental root of all our vices, we could say, according to Buddhism, is ignorance, right? So I might have forgotten to mention this last, my session yesterday, but this is one thing that I always like to share, is that, and I don't know where this saying is who is it attributed to. I think I once looked it up, but I forgot who it was. But there's this term, quite a well-known term in English, that ignorance is bliss. So it is a complete antithesis of that. Ignorance is the root of all our problems. Yeah, the very root is ignorance, and then out of ignorance comes all sort of misconceptions and one of the misconceptions that we strongly hold on is the misconception of permanence, that we are, and then this misconception of permanence permeates throughout our life. We have it permeates through our relationships, through our belongings. We think that if we have something nice, that it should last, it would always be permanent. And although we intellectually may not acknowledge that, there's a deep-grained sort of sense that or longing that it will last. And that's true with relationships, true with objects, and true with our life too. Our life as we know it now, with our bodies. One Tibetan master had mentioned many centuries ago, he said, it's actually a blessing that we age gradually. He said, imagine if we woke up one day, we'll go to bed youthful one evening, one night, we wake up an old person the next day. We won't be able to handle it. So it's actually, there's a term in English also, graceful aging, gracefully aging. So yes, if we have the fortune to have a long life, the aging process comes gradually. And so because it comes gradually, on one hand, it's a blessing because it gives us time to adjust with the changes that we go through physically and psychologically, emotionally. But on the other hand, it's also like a curse because it gives us the illusion, it reinforces that illusion that actually, as it is now, I'm quite permanent. I'm not going to go any big changes. Yeah. So any major change that we would see, obviously, is all dependent on the subtle changes. If subtle changes didn't occur, a big change cannot occur. So our death is not sudden. As the teachings mention, we're destined to, our death process actually started the moment we were born. The moment we were born, this, our lifespan, however long we're destined to live karmically, is being ticking away. As the clock ticks, our time is ticks away. Actually, I saw a movie many years ago. I think it was called Time or something. It was interesting. And people are born with a digital number of how much life they have. And as the seconds tick by, their life is. But then the whole point of the movie is that you can trade. The currency was not money, but time. You give time to other people, so you take time. And the rich people had the most time they had, Very interesting movie, actually. It really makes you think. And people are all the disputes and wars about getting more time. Yeah. So it was all about getting more time. And although that was a movie, it really shows up how our psychic does seem to work. We are kind of like trying to buy time, and we accumulate as if we're going to live forever. And um, and the ability for me to even say this is because I've heard it. Do I really believe that? Do I believe that my time is ticking away by the second? No. If I really believe that, then I would be a better practitioner. But the reality is that it is ingrained, that imprints, as they call in Buddhist teachings, or that habitual pattern of thinking that one's life is permanent, one's going to last for a long time, is so ingrained that it permeates everything we do. So that's then with that misconception of that will last forever, or that things last forever and that our relationship will last. We invest so much time and energy with that misconception that when things do naturally, when the bigger changes occur, when relationships fall apart, when our prized object breaks down, or our prized car that we've worked so hard to get and pay for and paid off, house, the mortgage we paid off, when it actually collapses, for whatever natural disasters or whatever other reasons, then if we were truly invested our whole time and energy in believing that we've got something permanent, and when it suddenly disintegrates and goes away, it's very hard to bear that loss. And no wonder there's so many. I've heard many stories about almost unbelievable, too kind of like grim to sound true, but I forgot where it was, States, or was it in some affluent country? They had lost overnight. The stock market had lost all their earnings, and out of that desperation and shock, and the person went back home. He had set fire to the whole. All the horses perished in that. His wife, his children, and himself, all gone, just because the stock market had fallen down, right? So it may sound like a fantasy, but it's actually had happened. The drastic things which could happen if we're so stuck into our misconceptions, and if we don't get out of it, that the worldly concerns, when they're so predominant, and our life is ruled by these worldly concerns, then that is similar sort of disastrous states of mind, at least, can occur. So therefore, as a way to release oneself from the worldly concerns, the teachings on death and impermanence is said to be one of the optimist ways, the best ways to let go of that strong clinging to our possessions, to our life, and to our deed concerns and worldly concerns, basically. So therefore, as many of you are familiar with, I'll just go how do we then, if death, being aware of death can be a development for Dharma practice in a Buddhist context, then what are the ways then to bring that awareness to mind? Meditation, or the 9-point death meditation. The first is the three certainties, the three three roots, which is known as the three roots or the three premises. There's three reasons for each of these premises and the three conclusions. So the three premises, or what is also known as the three roots, but maybe we can call it the premises, is that first is death is certain. And I think any logical person would acknowledge and accept that. The second premise is that the time of death is uncertain. And the third premise is that at the time of death, nothing but the Dharma, or in a more broader sense, spiritual practice will help at the time of death. And so what are the reasons that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, and nothing but the spiritual Dharma or spiritual practice will help at the time of death. So death is certain because, and then of course, when time allows, we could expand on each of these reasons, but I'll just list them out here. And then of course, for those who are not familiar, can do more readings on it. So the first reason death is certain is that death will inevitably come, and no circumstances can prevent death. And of course, here the teachers will list all the previous great masters who've come, and the Buddha himself, and all the great masters who came after the Buddha, but then also in more practical circumstances, in each and every one of us, there's no one in this room or in Zoom or anywhere else in the world who has not had someone in their family who has had a death. Yeah. Immediately we can all say that, well, there will not be that many who would have our great-grandparents alive now. And many of us wouldn't have our grandparents alive now. And some of us would not even have our parents alive now. So that in itself is, the certainty of death, that eventually, when the time comes, one's own time will be up as too. And prevent death, science would like to think that there might be one day there'll be a breakthrough, and then, that we could prevent death, but that's not going to happen. So the second reason why death is certain is nothing is being added to one's lifespan, and it is always being subtracted from. So again, so this is where, if time allows, we have a little bit more discussion about what does it mean to have a lifespan. So it is said that, our human existence is one where the lifespan is not fixed. There's no fixed lifespan for anyone. Depending on one's karma and also one's merit, one may have a longer lifespan or a shorter lifespan. And that is also, at least with the reality of some life forms, even as human, can be short as a few months, few weeks, a few months in the mother's womb, and perishes before they're born, still born. Some humans die soon after they're born. Some in their youth, and in their toddlers, in the teenage, some in their mid-20s. And then for us, for more lucky ones, we have longer lifespan that can go up into more riper ages. But there's no fixed lifespan, although there could be individually a certain lifespan, which is determined by one's previous karma and merit, as it is explained in the teachings. But whatever lifespan one has, even determined from one's previous karma and merit, it is said that one could add on a bit with one's virtuous practices now, but even with what we add on to our lifespan now, there's a finite time. One could not live more than, say, 100 and so years, whatever the general norm of a lifespan is of old age. So, but whatever lifespan one has been born with is constantly subtracted, as with the analogy I used earlier with that portrayed in that movie where, if we had a ticking clock on our arm as we were born, a digital watch, each second is being distracted. It's taken as the clock moves, our lifespan is distracted. So that is the second reason why death is certain. The third is one will definitely die before getting around to practicing Dharma or leading a spiritual or meaningful life. Now, this seems a bit ambiguous, but it is more in relation to often have this illusion that as a spiritual person, or in a Buddhist context, if we are interested in Dharma, we might think, yes, this all sounds very interesting. Practicing Dharma seems, a right thing to do, but I will do it later. When I have more time. When right now I'm busy with this project, that project, and when I have time, when everything settles down, when I retire, whatever. But apparently, death doesn't take that equation. Death may come around before you settle down everything. So the conclusion thus here is that one must practice the Dharma and lead a spiritual life. Because that finding time and the leisure to practice Dharma sometime later in the future may not come at all. So therefore, because death is certain, and might as well then prepare for it. So what does it mean to lead a spiritual life? Well, in the Dharma context, if we invest our time and energy where we don't put all our time and energy in the worldly concerns, but spend some time and energy in the Dharma, pursuing the spiritual path, Dharma path, then that will be the way. So then the second is the time of death is uncertain. And that is the second premises. So the three reasons for time certain is that our and this is especially the case of people's lifespan during their degenerate time. So that was lightly touched on. So time is definitely, if the humans had a fixed lifespan, as humans, if we were born destined to live to a certain age, we could all then have, we could work out our life that like, okay, this much of our years I would spend in education, developing my career, making a good livelihood. And then when I get enough money to retire, then I don't have to worry too much. And then I would be able to practice because I have so many years left. But because the lifespan is not fixed, at the time of death is uncertain. And the second reason is when we will die is uncertain because there are many factors contributing towards our death and few towards supporting our life. And the teachings goes into great detail explaining this factor as well, which is all very practical. It's not some sort of fantasy. We would say that normally we would invest our time and energy to find the most conducive means to support our life. Thus, of course, the sufficient in food, dwelling, in clothing, and all of that, and health. We will invest all of time and energy in having good health. But all of these measures, which are, there's many other factors which contribute to our death, which are not conducive, such as unpredictable natural disasters and accidents, which could occur at any time without any fault on one side. An accident can still occur. Now, all of these are unconducive circumstances for our life. But even the conducive circumstances, such as our food, even food can be a cause of death. Conducive factors for our health, which is medicine. Medicine taken wrongly could contribute to one's death. Dwelling, which is to keep us safe, to protect us. The dwellings could collapse and be a cause of death. So even not only are there many factors which directly contribute to our death, which are unconducive circumstances or factors, even the conventionally conducive factors can become a cause of death. So that is why time of death is uncertain. Then the third reason for the time of death uncertain is when we will die is uncertain because our body is very weak and fragile. So that couldn't be any truer. What is actually, what we consider our shield is actually just, our skin, that is very, very thin. And And of course, it's maybe a good thing. So then when we need an injection, it goes through easily. But we don't have, of course, to protect the skin, fragile skin. Of course, in the ancient times, you had the armor, like when you go out to the battle, right? But as it is, our bodies is very fragile. Uh, and this is one of the factors of being a contaminated body. It is fragile not only because it is very easily pierced and it can be wounded by external factors, but even internally, we have so much. We are so prone. We're so vulnerable to all kind of diseases, and contagious diseases which we could catch anytime if we're not mindful and careful, of course. Um, one great wake-up call was during the pandemic, right? We all will never forget that, how that there was extreme measures of trying to protect ourselves from the viruses. So all of that is to protect our life. Because it is very fragile. Conclusion, because the time of death is uncertain, one must practice the Dharma and lead a spiritual life starting from now. So if earlier we thought, oh, I should practice the Dharma, but it could be any time because one may still have some time, even though death is certain, because the time of death is uncertain, we might as well start the practice of Dharma now. So again, here it can sound a little bit, initially when I heard these teachings, I thought, oh, does that mean I have to leave everything aside now, all my affairs, and just go off and retreat and do practices? We get these fixed ideas about what practicing Dharma means. And it took me many years to realize that actually what practicing Dharma means can be as simple as just changing one's attitude. If one is a negative state of mind, it takes a while to notice it, yes, because we're so habituated with the negative state of mind. But the moment we allow ourselves the grace to change our attitude, shift our focus from being obsessed with me and my needs and being so upset and angry that my needs are not met to being a little bit more gracious, letting go a bit. The moment we let go, our mind becomes more relaxed. In that moment, we practice Dharma. And it is simple as that. The moment we shift our attitude from a negative state of mind in a positive state of mind, that is when we're practicing Dharma. And so it is simple in our everyday life. We have numerous opportunities. These classical examples of now practice Dharma and go off into retreat was for those who were already leading a spiritual life from the beginning, but even their spiritual life started to become, we talked about spiritual bypassing last night just a bit. Yeah, even in a monastery life, any kind of life, spiritual bypassing can happen, where you take things for granted. You think, yes, I'm leading a spiritual life. For those, then the masters would say, no, just having studied here and living in a monastery is not enough. Go off and do some retreat. So Dharma practice can be different ways and different forms, depending on the circumstances. But in the most immediate and practical immediate way is really shifting one's mind. As we have heard the teachers that, yes, it can be beneficial and useful to go off into secluded places to do retreat and dedicate your life to practice Dharma. But the real meaning of retreat, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other teachers have emphasized, is retreating your mind from worldly affair, worldly concerns. So you could be living in a busy city, but if your mind is one is protecting one's mind from being completely immersed into worldly concerns, then, in one's own way, one is in having a retreat in one's own mind, a seclusion in one's mind. So that is the main point. So I don't want to take too much on this, but that last one is the third premise is nothing helps at the time of death. Nothing would help at the time of death but spiritual practice. Why? Because of three reasons. Worldly possessions cannot help death. So no matter how wealthy we may be, and how many possessions, it death, and B, it cannot actually assist us at the time of death. We will actually away. We cannot take any of them away, but the worldly possessions cannot still a peaceful mind. Yeah. In fact, it can be detrimental to our peaceful mind if we're too attached to worldly possessions. So worldly possessions and wealth cannot help us. Second, friends and relatives can neither prevent our death nor go with us. So the experience of death is something completely on a personal level. We have to experience death completely on our own terms by ourselves. Friends and relatives, Dharma friends or spiritual friends can assist us to a certain degree, but they cannot actually help us. They cannot go with us. We cannot share our actual experience of death with them, or they cannot really kind of, like kind of like walk us through the process in a way that if we're not prepared for it ourselves, right? So friends and relatives, no matter how much they may love us and care for us, they cannot prevent our death. That is a given. That is a fact and reality. They cannot go with us. So therefore, what can help us is the spiritual practice. Our very own body, the third reason is very, very own body, which we have nourished and cherished and for our whole life. We have, actually most of our time and energy has been spent in feeding, clothing, and finding a proper dwelling for this body, and then this body that we have invested so much time and energy, and now the last stage, is going to fail us. And because our bodies is failing, we're experiencing death. So the body cannot help us at that time. Yeah. So thus, then the conclusion of the third premises is that because general factors will help us, one must practice purely without the stains of the eight worldly. Lama mentions, because our opportunity to practice Dharma in whatever way we understand it, spiritual practice, that when we do have some time, the least we can do is try to make it as pure as possible, as perfect as possible, and so that means if we're not allowing it to be stained or less stained with the eight worldly concerns, to the degree that it is less stained with the eight worldly concerns, to that extent, to that degree, our Dharma becomes more pure. Sure. Oh, sorry about that, anyone online. Yeah, and excited with the mic. Oh, it's not the battery, is it? Closer. Yeah. Oh, here. Oh, really? Okay. How's that? Oh, really? Okay. That could have been shared earlier. Is that better for anyone online? Yeah? You can hear better? Oh, good, good. Okay. We found a solution for that. Um, so so I presented the gist of the morning's topic, which is the awareness of death, the importance of why it could be useful to be aware of death, not only as a way, well, mainly as a way to, because it will happen, might as well understand it better, be more aware of it and understand it better to whatever degree we can. And of course, the Buddhist teachings offer a great source of valuable information about what that is about. We'll talk about that later, the process itself, and but how the awareness of death could help assist us if we are spiritually inclined, or at the very least, if we are inclined to lead a more righteous life, more meaningful life, or more ethical life, then the awareness of death can really assist us to be less concerned with our immediate gratifications, immediate sort of results and gratifications, and have a more wider perspective of life. And, I'm sure everyone might have had their share of their own experiences, but when sometimes one gets so bogged down with certain affairs or in certain situations, whatever, and one gets so caught up in it, if you just take a moment and if even reputation and all of that, and think, I'll be gone one day. Why does it matter so much, Why get so hung up on all of this when all of this wouldn't matter after we're all gone? So it can help to really reduce our obsession with our immediate sort of uh, need, sort of our tendency to try to get immediate results or resolutions and try to have everything perfect right now. Just letting a little bit more ease in our life. Let's give that space a bit. And then so we went over a bit of the nine point death meditation practice, which can be a good way to bring awareness of death in a more realistic and practical way. So with that, I think I will end our morning session for a break. And just to prepare for those online, um, when we come back, and I hope we have enough time, and maybe, yeah, actually, yes, we will have definitely time to do an exercise called the loss exercise, and it'll be can be a little bit challenging, but very rewarding, I would say. And so for this exercise, I've brought some of the materials actually, I brought the materials here. So everyone who's on Zoom at home, and if you're staying on for the following session, then what you would need is a piece of paper. Doesn't have to be colored. I just happen to have extra colored paper, which I brought, but a white sheet, a seven, what do you call it? Four by seven? 8 by 8 by 11, I think 8 by 11, just a piece of paper like that, which we would need, and then a pen. And then I think we would have a bowl here, but at home, if you have a bowl or some container, you just have that in front of you as we do the exercise. So a small bowl or a container, whatever container that you have in front of you at home, and a piece of paper like that, and a pen. And with that, I'll introduce the loss exercise when we come back. So we'll have, can a 10-minute break be okay for us to grab some tea and go to the toilet? So those at home also, please, enjoy the beverage you have your own, and we'll resume in 10 minutes. Okay. So who would like to be a volunteer for a short while, just passing things? Well, first of all, I'll explain. So I'm assuming that everyone on Zoom has also prepared themselves with a sheet of paper, and I'll just explain. Well, I'll go through the explanation as we go through the practice, to the exercise. But I was introduced this exercise when I attended one particular session at a hospice training, and it was called the loss exercise. And I was very impressed with this exercise, and I thought, oh, this is so good. And then I got the instructions, and I thought I'll use it whenever the appropriate topic is, in a course like this is done. So it mentions here that the purpose of the exercise is to help for the participants, to help participants to value what they have presently and not take things for granted, realize the changeability and impermanence of life, and challenge their over-dependence on family, jobs, things, etc. So basically, that's the gist. So I will mention straight off that it can be a little bit challenging, but because we're all spiritual seekers, I feel like there's going to be no problem with anyone. But it's going to be very personal. But I want to mention right on here that you'd be writing down personal things, but for no one to see. It's completely anonymous. I mean, you don't write your name on the pieces of paper. No one else is going to see it. So it's just like a personal exercise. It's going to be very personal, and writing things which are really personal to oneself, but it'll be all kept confidential. So especially people at home don't have to worry about that. But even in a group, things will be collected, but again, anonymously, will not be seen. So I just want to make that clear, so you don't hesitate in taking full advantage of, really putting down what one feels truthful to oneself. So for the participants here, I would just hand out a piece of paper each first. Anyone like to volunteer? Are you okay? Each one gets a sheet of paper and then a pen as well, if you don't have a pen. Okay. As a volunteer, you'll get my sample. So you don't need a piece of paper. You'll get that from me afterwards. And everyone got a pen? Oh, it's okay. The pens are there, so. Um, if I'd known we had such a small group, I would have come fully prepared, with this exercise. But usually in a large group, it's hard to do all of this as one person yourself. So now, since I haven't prepared, I want everyone to fold it in such so that you fold it first in half, and one half, and then that half that you have, right? You fold it in half again. Um, yeah. And then you fold that in half again. And the attempt here is to get 16 pieces of strips of paper. Finally, you fold it again in like that. So if you make the creases, what you call it, if you really push down hard on each of the sides, it'll make it easier to rip them apart later. So the idea is then, for those at home, so I hope you're seeing the demonstration here. So actually, I learned in my second exercise that I did with people is that you can do it like easily so that you open it up again into the first half, and you make the crease like stronger, and then you can rip it apart in the middle, hopefully quite easily if you lay it down. So that's two halves, right? So we've got two halves here. Yep, good. So each of those halves, you can put one down now. With the other half, you turn that into half, and then again, just make it tight here, and you cut that in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously. So you've got two halves here. And then with these pairs too, you make them into these small strips. So now you've got four strips here, right? Four strips, and then you'll get four from this side. So from the first half, you've got 8 strips. And then you get 8 strips from the other half. Um, Once you've done this exercise once, you cannot do it again. So I won't be able to participate. So someone could have had my strips. But anyway, that was for demonstration. Yeah. But if anyone was struggling, you may have 16. I've prepared. But I guess everyone's doing fine. So those on at home, I guess you get the idea. You're getting 16 strips of these papers. when the exercise was done, it was a little bit more complicated. There was a different color for each. There was red of four reds, four blues, whatever. But I thought that don't that's not going to be that complicated. And I found a way that basically you're distinguishing four of each kind. So what we're going to do is write number one on four of these. You're going to write number one on the corner, number one, and then the next four, you're going to write number two, then the next four, number three, and then the last four pair, you're going to write number four. So there are four sets of four. So just to distinguish between the four groups, because there's four groups. So each group is distinguished by the number one, number two, number three, number four. I hope that's clear for those online. Just on the corner, you put it number one for. Hang on, I just thought about. Yeah, no, that's fine. I think it's important to number them. So so for your own sake of ease, you'll keep these groups separately. You'll keep number one first, and then number two, and number three, number four. So this is a good part of the workshop or course we're doing because no one can fall asleep here. No matter how boring the teacher may be, you'll have to stay awake. So I guess you're more or less through it, and I guess it'll take the same amount of time for those at home because I cannot see you, I cannot gauge if you're on top of it all. But just assuming that everyone's fine with their strips. So we begin by the first group of fours, which is number one. On the first four, you're going to write down a name. On each strip, you're going to write an individual, a person that who you consider who's very dear to you, very dear. Some now and presently, someone who's very dear to you could be anyone within your family or friends or spiritual mentors, whoever it may be, someone very dear to you. On each strip, you write so you've got four of number ones. Strip one of one, you write someone who's dear to you, and then strip two, someone else, like that. So four individuals. Is that clear? Preferably that they are alive, because it's to do with our present situation now, that someone we dearly love now. It shouldn't be too hard to find four people, right? It's permissible to put someone down you might have a love-hate relationship with as well. It's okay. As long as the love equation is higher. So four people one really loves, right? As one someone considers very dear to oneself. Okay, can we move on to the next strip then? I guess, yeah. So on strip number two, four of number two, you write four objects that are very precious to you. Any objects, whatever they may be. Um, an old Ming vase, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe your car is your most precious prized object. An object that one, either uses or regularly or sentimental, whatever it may be, four precious objects. And these objects may also be like some objects which we consider quite essential, like what we need in our daily life. You want to replace it. Well, I think I understand what you're saying. That particular object you have, it's okay, but as long as you can replace it, but still, it's a precious object. Yes, because you want to replace it. So it means that object plays a significant role in your life. Now, on strip number three, for those who can move on, four roles that you play in your life, either in your in a, either in your family situation, work situation, or whatever, uh, for significant roles that one plays in one's life. Um, okay, I think if we can move on to the last one, the last group, um, for activities that take up most of your time in your life. So I see some still working at it. By the way, Venerable Tendrup, when someone has on Zoom, if they want to ask, will we hear them if they have, can unmute, oh, they can unmute themselves. Okay, so if anyone on Zoom is not clear about any part of this exercise or have a question to clear it up, please unmute yourself and ask the question. But assuming that everyone's got so far everything clear, now comes the main part of the exercise, more challenging part, I would say. If I could ask my volunteer, uh, what was it? Sorry, Mark. That's right, Mark. If you're happy to be my volunteer after this. So first, what everyone would do is first everyone needs to choose one from each category. Choose one strip from each category that will be surrendered, which will be surrendered, and you'll have to give up forever, and it'll be collected in the bowl. And those at home, if you have a container in front of you, or even if it's just a desk in front of you, you're going to choose one from each strip, and then hold it in your hand, and then pass it on. Put it in front of you where you have surrendered it, given it up for good. I know, I'm sorry, this is painful, but so if Mark, yeah. Have you made your choice, Mark? If you can put it in there and then collect it from everyone else, that'd be great. Yeah, if you just put it on there, thank you. So we'll just now pause for a moment and just take a moment to contemplate and just meditate on what it feels like. What does it feel like to give up, having given up a dear person, never to see them again, a precious object that one will not have in possession anymore, and a role. One is so used to having played this role, but one is not going to be able to play this role anymore. And an activity that one may have enjoyed doing, and was part of one's part of being alive, and a very dear enjoyable activity is also given up now forever. So just reflect. Let us reflect on how it feels to have given this up for forever. Okay, we can still move on in life. So the next is where everyone chooses one strip from any category. Yeah, you can make another choice for four strips this time from any category. So you don't have to go in a sequence. Just choose one from any that can be. Of course, we've got three left of each, right? So it could be three from the whole one category, and then one from another one, or whatever. You can mix it around anyway. Do you get the point? So you're choosing four strips from any category. Just choose four, but from any category to give them up forever. Yes. Yes. Yeah, four. Yeah. So those on Zoom, I hope that was clear enough. So you're choosing 4 strips again, but not 1 from each category, rather 4 from any category. Oh, Mark, that was quick. Oh, good. Oh, good. Mark, thank you. This. Okay. So now let us just reflect for a short time on how it feels again to have given up forever, whatever one choices one had to make. When it was not easy choices, but nevertheless one had to make a choice. So that whatever one has surrendered to never be able to see again, have the enjoyment to be with again. So just how does that feel? Okay. Hmm. So although we're a little bit daunted with so far, we can still continue. So the last part of this exercise now is where hopefully it makes it easier for you. Um, this time you don't have to make a choice. All you're going to do is be ready for the angel of death to make the choice. So from your part, what you're going to do is you're going to hold up all the strips like that. So those on Zoom, on online, also at home, you're going to hold up all your strips, like fan them out so that it'll make it easier for the angel of death to make the choice. You fan them out, and while you're holding them, the most important part is you keep your eyes closed. So you're just, again, reflecting on the death meditation. The death angel will appear, will come. One does not know when, and one does not see it coming, but it will come. So to reflect that part of the meditation, we hold up the strips, just knowing that, yes, we'd heard about death being certain. Okay, I accept that. The time of death is uncertain. Okay, well, I'll have to accept that as well. So, and the choices that will make, the angel of death will make. So now the important part, and no cheating, please, especially for those online, you keep your eyes closed. And for those online at home, please don't open your eyes until I give the instruction to do so. And also for those over you here as well, but especially those at home, because the angel of death will not be visibly available for you, but it'll come. But also for those in the room, that angel of death will visit and make the choices. And after the choice is made, just remain with your eyes closed and just for the main part of this meditation, just keep your eyes closed and allow this to be a whole practice. Keep your eyes closed and continue the meditation of how it feels after the death, the angel of death made that choice. How does it feel? Just meditate on that, and then I'll then continue with instruction as you keep your eyes closed. Is that clear? Simple? No, no. This time you don't have the angel, so you're not spared. Angel of death will come to you. So are we ready? You just you fan them out and you hold them up to make it easy for the angel of death to choose. And at those at home, at this point now, you're holding them up, you fan them out, you're holding them up in either one hand or both hands, and you're just there, also waiting for the angel of death to visit. And when the angel of death has visited, it will give you the instruction what will happen next. So for those on Zoom, at this point, the angel of death has visited and has made the choice for you. And the choice is that you just let go of everything in your hand in front of you. Just put it in the bowl or whatever you have in front of you. Just let it all go. Not one strip is remaining. Everything is gone. So just let go of all of that. And so here we now reflect on how it feels after that choice has been made. So how does it feel to never see or have those persons, loved, dear ones, or things, objects, roles that one has to play? And the roles one has to play, as well as activities one has. So I just realized that I hadn't had the mic on. So for those at home, if you were struggling to hear the instruction earlier, basically you're letting go of everything. The angel of death has made the choice of stripping away everything from one that one is familiar with in this life. So now we just really reflect on, without all of these things that we are normally associated with ourselves in life, our dear loved ones, our objects, our activities, what we would consider part of our identity has been all stripped away. So what does it feel like when all of that has been taken away? What is the sense of identity or sense of me left? Is there a sense of identity or sense of me which is still left or not? How does it feel? So here we can now slowly come out of this exercise, the meditation, and at this point we can, if we like, we can just share our experiences if we have some time. How did it affect one, and then how did it affect one in any way? How did it affect one? Was it difficult? What part was difficult? Was it easy? Anyone in the room like to share? Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Anyone else like to share? Those on Zoom as well, or anyone in the room? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Please to share. Someone on Zoom.
I can
Amanda.
share.
Amanda, go ahead and unmute.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that's me. I'm not sure what was said in the Gompa, so apologies if I'm repeating what was already said. But I noticed when we got to the third step how my mind was scheming to try and hang on to the things I wanted. I was looking at all the categories and putting a lot of energy into thinking how which ones I could give up and which ones I couldn't. I was really thinking hard on that. And then when unexpectedly I had to give all of them up, then I felt quite bereft, even though it was just an exercise with paper. So it was quite interesting to see that.
Did you say it was a relief? What did you?
No, I felt quite bereft.
Oh, bereft. Okay. Because there have
Yes,
some who have said that it had been a relief. Because they didn't have to make the choice.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
No, sure. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yes.
I had a different experience.
Uh-huh.
Many years ago, when I moved from one city to another, um, my apartment was broken into and everything that was dear to me was stolen. So my grandmother's earrings, the bracelet that my father gave me when I was 13 that matched all of my mother and my sister's bracelets, everything was stolen that was of any quote unquote worth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that experience at the age of 26 taught me that it doesn't matter what you have and nothing is forever. And choosing the first part of choosing what to give up was harder than the angel of death choosing.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, yes. Thanks very much for sharing that. And of course, as we would have all seen, that the main gist of this exercise is, how ready, how prepared, how willing are we to let go? It's really about letting go, isn't it? And it's not easy. I remember once, and because I used to travel a lot in the past, and I remember one particular time I was in Nepal, the monastery I grew up in, Kopan, Nepal. And I was on a pilgrimage to go somewhere, but the pilgrimage was that the bus was coming down below the hill because Kopan's on top of a hill, and it was at a nunnery. So it meant that I had to walk down very early in the morning carrying my belongings. And I had quite a lot of, heavy stuff like my books and everything. And I was thinking like, oh, it was too early to find a taxi and it was too close. I thought I'll just manage. And then suddenly I got a feeling like, well, all this baggage, it's like, oh, well, one thing about that is I won't have to be carrying all of this. No baggage to be carried along with me. I saw a small cartoon or makeup saying spiritual airlines. Spiritual lines, there was a plane, and underneath it said spiritual lines. And after that, it said, we promise you will lose all your baggage. So I'm sure there may be others who also like to share. Also, this brings up usually during our discussion whether if this was close to an experience of what happens at death, then was there a sense that something continued or not? Is it when one's whole sense of identity is stripped away? Was there? I guess we all have, in this exercise at least, there would be a sense because not everything, at least one's life has not been stripped away yet. So there is a sense of identity left. But I just wonder, curious of how people might have felt with that part, whether there's still a sense of identity left or not. Because that brings up the question, which we will be discussing in our next session, is that what happens after death? Do we cease to exist entirely? Does something continue? So that will be discussed more in depth later, but I just was curious. Yeah. Oh, there's the microphone, which can be passed over. Okay, sure.
Greatly relieved that I could end my battle to maintain my body.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so much work.
Mm-hmm.
As my body slowly kind of begins to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting that, I fight that like crazy, and I'm going, oh, thank God that's over. As far as what was left, I discovered some things I didn't write down on the papers but
also you had to reserve some things.
I think I reserved. There's some secret things even for myself.
Right.
But as far as what came next, I guess I did not care at all. It was just such a relief. I did not care. I mean, there remained something when everything else was gone, but whether that was going to go as well, I didn't really care.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Mark, for sharing that. Someone online? Yeah, please go ahead.
Nan, unmute.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, I started crying, even though I knew generally what was coming, because we can think about it ahead of time. And so I knew what this exercise was going to be about. But with the very first card, I just burst into tears and just felt, as somebody else used the word bereft. And I actually cheated a little bit because I was using the angel of death from the beginning because I could not make a choice of of letting go of any of these on my own. And so it was like just let go of, the holding on. So by the time we did let them all go, I'd gone through that really bereft place and I did feel a lot more peace.
Mm.
And afterwards it was kind of like a lot of sticky things had kind of unstuck and let go. So
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a practice and I'll continue, but I actually put His Holiness the Dalai Lama on one of them, and that was the angel of death chose to take from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like then I really worried about that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So thank you, Venerable.
Thank
This was a
you.
good exercise.
Sure. Thank you. At this point, if time allows, and I know we're a little over time, but I was given grace to go a little over time anyway, is that a phenomenon which I'm sure many would have heard of, and sometimes someone in the group might even had an experience of it, or somewhat similar experience, or what is called the near-death experience. And I'm sure people would be. I mean, it's quite an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? Near that, I mean, it's actual factual cases of people who had been pronounced clinically dead, but yet revived and came back. And many came back profoundly changed because the experience was completely, one could say, otherworldly or beyond the normal, experience we have here. Anyone has had or is familiar with near-death experience? Anyone online? Or has had someone, if not directly oneself, knows of someone or has been moved by these accounts of these experiences? Well, I usually give a chance for someone who might have an actual direct experience, a near-death experience. I'm always curious and waiting to hear from someone who might have had the actual experience. But if there's no one who does share that, then usually I take the opportunity to share my simulated near-death experience. It was not a real one, but it was simulated and it felt very real. So if you like to hear about that, I can share that. It was interesting, and it had such an impact that I, of course, don't forget it at all. And it's when I remember it, it's a great, yeah, it's a great reminder for me when I'm thinking about the experience. So, as someone who has traveled a lot and been translating different centers, I've had to travel a lot. So I would have flown airplanes many times and kind of never get 100% comfortable in in every way. I usually choose to sit at the window, but that means that I can always speculate. Well, what if a plane goes down? Where would it land? And I always, if it's on the land, if we're going over land, I would see a strip, like an open pasture in the distance. I think, oh, land over there. If it's on the water, I would think, well, we'll land on the water. Yes. When we're going over mountains, that's when I feel like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen now. There's nowhere to land. But anyway, besides these sort of like, passing thoughts, which are not related to any reason to have any fears. Of course, when there's turbulences, then the fear comes up again. Now, but whenever the fear comes up, you know, brush it aside soon. The turbulence, goes away, and then everyone's, everything's, calm again. And you think, yeah, of course, we're safe, everything's fine. So one particular flight, transatlantic flight, I think it was from Melbourne, Australia, nonstop 14 hours to see my mom, visit my mom in LA, and the flight was to LA. So it was pitch dark in the night, and as usual, I chose a window seat. And I looked down, it's pitch dark, and I know we're thousands of feet high. And I don't know if it was an actual turbulence or something triggered. I think it might have been a turbulence where suddenly it triggered that initial primal fear of like, oh. And unlike other times where soon everything's fine, and you just go back to either watching something on the monitor or just daydreaming about something and just or just relaxing music, whatever. But normally that's what would happen. I would just forget about everything, the whole incident. It'll just be fine. But that particular time, I looked out the window, it was pitch dark, and I knew that if the plane is going down, it will just crash into the ocean. It can't just land somewhere safely, nicely. It'll most likely. And so I actually embraced that fear, and I thought, okay, the plane is going down, Michael. What are you going to do? And I got that initial great sense of fear and panic that any ordinary person would have. I had all of that come up. And interestingly, I didn't think of writing any note to anyone or leaving last messages. I just thought, okay, I've got just a few minutes left before the impact happens, and then it'll be just all darkness, right? Whatever happens after that. And I was just embracing myself for the impact, which might happen any moment, any few minutes. And of course, from the dread and fear and panic, I thought, the plane is going down. Soon it'll be all dark. I don't want to die with this fear and panic and all of that. And the first time in my life, I swear, honestly, the first time in my life, I got a sense of what refuge means. Really, that's the first time. And I don't think I've had that similar strong experience since then. So I wish I had more of these experiences, but I had that sense of like, okay, fine. I know my teachers, the Buddhas definitely exist somewhere. My teachers definitely exist. His Holiness Dalai Lama, all my teachers, Lama Zopa was still present with us at that time. You've taken care of me since I was young, brought me through life and all my ups and downs. And now this is the last stage of my life. I know you will take care of me. Just make it a safe passage. And the moment I, in a way, surrendered to my teachers, the objects of refuge in that way, a genuine sense of peace befell me. I really felt that sense of calm and peace. But if the plane was actually going down, I won't be even relating this story to you, right? So the plane didn't go down, and since I was waiting for the moment of impact, it didn't happen. Then in that process of wild impact could be happening anytime, but it was prolonging. It kind of took longer than I thought it was happening. Suddenly, I had the image of my mom waiting at LAX, Los Angeles airport, and looking from monitor to monitor, asking people, isn't the plane landed? It's supposed to have landed by now, or where is it? And then she would have been given the news that the plane is not landing because it's crashed. And the fear, the anxiety, the shock, the unbearable bereft that my mother would experience, I couldn't bear with that anymore. Suddenly I thought, I can't die. And that whole sense of, again, that panic, fear, everything came back. When I first shared this experience with others, I was consoled by someone saying, oh, how beautiful, how nice. You were thinking about your mother, you're compassionate to your mother. And I felt like, yeah. But when I analyzed it further, I realized, no, it was my attachment. I was bringing up that neurotic mind of fear and all of that, thinking, how could that help my mom? I'm gone, right? She would have to deal with it, whatever way she deals with it, and she would have dealt with it, like we all deal with people who die in our life. It's hard. It takes time, but you get over it. You have to move on. The best thing you can do for your loved one who's passed on is to live a meaningful life now, to lead a righteous life now and dedicate your merit to them, right? That's the best way. So what I realized, what became after my first patting on my shoulder by this comment by, oh, you're so compassionate. I like to believe that was true, but I realized no, it was my attachment to my mother that brought up all that fear and anxiety, not my compassion and love for her. If I had true love and compassion, that would not be the best gift for my mom. The best gift for my mom would be that she would be consoled that I died in a peaceful state of mind. And it's very interesting. I saw this interview with some people who were, I don't remember the times and dates, but I just came upon this interview on YouTube. It was of people who were together with others who had been captured as hostages and they were beheaded. And interestingly, some somehow were spared, and they said that even when they knew that now they were going to be killed, there was a sense of calmness and peace that came on their mind. And they were able to send a message just before. One sent an actual message. They were beheaded, but the message they were able to get out to their family was, "Don't worry, I'm at peace." And that was a consoling thing for the remainder family. So it is interesting that I think that the amount of peace that we experience is to the degree of how much we have just completely surrendered and let go. And when we are able, and when it seems like it is inevitable, the most cases of death, I've had a great fortune to be with, on a few occasions, people have passing away. And my experience, at least on the surface from the outside, has been mostly that it's been peaceful. And I think in the last stages, when there's a sense of like real letting go, there's a peace which comes with that. If the actual experience of death can be peaceful, then from the Buddhist point of view is, well, death itself is an experience and you get through that and you go through it. But what happens afterwards? That's the main question, which we will be discussing in our next session. Okay. Well, I'm sure others would have liked to share as well. And later we'll have, hopefully we'll have more time for discussion. And if you have any other things you wanted to share from this exercise, please bring it on later as well from the group here and those online. And we'll have a lunch break until, can we say until 1:15 then, just to give that one, that great. Oh, it was 1:30. Oh, yeah, okay. So we'll still keep that then. We'll still have more than an hour for a lunch break. Great. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful lunch, everyone.